Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we are going to go ahead and continue our beginner guitar lesson series using Mel Bay's Modern Guitar Method, Grade 1. Today we are looking at page 35, and page 35 actually doesn't teach any new concepts. It's just a continuation of the stuff that we have been learning, but it does teach us two new great tunes, right? So the first one is a duet, and it's called Song Without Words. We'll go through our standard duet process, which I'll play both parts for you so you can hear them and also practice along with them. And I will also show you what those parts sound like together. After that, I'll go ahead and play Terry's tune for you, which is the next new song that it's going to teach. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Alright, so Song Without Words. On this one, really the only thing to watch out for, and it's not really clear on here, but I think, and this is what I've always told my students on this exercise, is you have some measures where it specifically tells you to do all down picking, and then you have some measures where the eighth notes, it doesn't say anything. So, what I tend to ask my students to do on this one is to, when it asks you to do all down, but then on the measures that it doesn't say anything, go ahead and do down up picking on those. So we're just getting used to kind of going back and forth, doing some all down picking and doing some down up picking. Alright, this one does incorporate a DC Alfine, which we learned about a couple lessons ago. Just as a reminder, DC means da capo, or the head, the top, right? So when you see DC Alfine, it means go back to the beginning and play until you see the word fine, which means finish, okay? And then that will be the end. All right, let's go ahead and try it. So here is Song Without Words at 72 on the metronome. This is part 1. Oh, 1, 2, ready, and play. There we go, and that's that. Really, the only other thing that you might have to practice a little bit is kind of that shift up to the A and figuring out what makes most sense for you, where to make that shift. And that's kind of your prerogative. That time when I played, I actually shifted. I played G with my third finger, and I just shifted up right there for the fourth finger, and then did the same thing. So it was a really quick shift up and back, and that's fine. You can shift a little earlier if you wanted to play the G with your second finger, so shift right there from F to G. And then play the G again with your second finger, and then shift back down for the F. Either one of those options would work just fine. Okay, here is the second line at 72 on the metronome. Part 2 at 72. Oh, 1, 2, ready, and play. There we go. That's the idea. So that is this part 2 at 72. Here is what the two parts sound like together. 1, 2, ready and play. Alright, so let's go ahead and jump this metronome up to 120. So here is part 1 at 120 on the metronome. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... Alright, let's go ahead and try the second line. So here's part 2 at 120 on the metronome. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. And there is the second part at 120. Let's go ahead and hear what they sound like together. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, and... Alright, so that is Song Without Words, and really there's nothing too crazy or tricky about this one. It's just kind of learning some new parts, some new combinations of fingers. Good stuff. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at Terry's Tune. Now this one is really, it's just a new song that we're learning. There is one little thing in here that we haven't seen before. I wouldn't call this necessarily an entirely new concept, but it is just kind of something notated in there that we haven't seen before. And that is in the third measure. Okay, so we're in that third measure. There's a D minor chord telling us at the beginning of that measure. So we have an open D, and then we have E, and then we have F, which it says to play with our third finger, but it's marked underneath of that with an X and some dashed lines saying to hold. And what that means is it's just telling you that you need to leave that finger down because it needs to be in place for when you go to play that D minor chord later. It kind of wants that note to ring underneath part of the D minor chord, right? And then again with the A, with your second finger, it's saying hold that. And then you have the fourth finger D. Right? It's just letting those notes ring, okay? That kind of naturally happens in lines like this anyway, if you're not taking your fingers off all the time for every note. But just watch out for that and keep that in place. It does it again in the third line with the C chord. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. All right, let's go ahead and give it a shot. So here it is, Terry's tune at 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, 3, 1, ready, and... Da capo. 3 off. All right, so there's Terry tune at 72. Now, this one is funny. It actually took me a few takes to get that one just right for you guys, but it's really, I mean, it's kind of deceiving. It looks like there's nothing to it, and really there's not anything too fancy, but there are just a couple moves in there that are just a little awkward. For me, it's when we get to that double bar, and you get where the third line and the fifth measure of the third line. When it starts into the half note and quarter note thing, that section to me has always just been a little bit awkward. And for me, that's a good thing to practice, right? Now, something that I've done with my students on this one in the past and that I think is good, I think this is a good place to introduce this concept, right, is to maybe experiment on this, especially the second half, It's the second half. So after you get past the double bar line, and you start with that. This is a good place to maybe experiment with some hybrid picking. And what I mean by that is, this is really common in jazz playing, and especially in country style lead guitar playing, is to do this hybrid picking. So what I might do is I might pick that A. So again, this is on the 5th measure of the 3rd line. 5th measure of the 3rd line. Pick the A with the pick, and then pick the B and F, the 2 notes together, with your 2nd and 3rd finger with your right hand. I'll get up close so you can kind of see what I'm doing there. So I might experiment with that on this section. Just kind of developing some independence. You know, that is a technique that can be used on guitar, and some people go their whole guitar career and never really learn that skill, but just kind of having some independence between your pick and the rest of your fingers. This is a good exercise to play around with that a little bit. So another thing that you'll notice on this one that is a little funny, and that is that the 8th note lines are not really moving always from step to step. There are some skips, okay? And they, you know, it's kind of starting to introduce us into that concept that, you know, lines don't always have to move step, 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 up or down. They can skip around a little bit, so watch out for that as well. Okay, so that is Terry Tune at 72 on the metronome. Feel free to take it faster or slower, do what you need to do with this one. But that's all we're going to do for today. So thank you so much for tuning in. As always, please subscribe. If you enjoyed today's content and would like to support Nick Tolman music and see more of this content happen, please check out my Patreon page. Also, if you haven't already, checked out my website at www.nicktolmanmusic.com. Please check that out. There are lots of resources on there for you as you are learning to play guitar, and we will see you next time. Thanks.